All right. Welcome back to All Cars Y'all. My name is John. It's time for another Motorweek retro review reaction. And this week, I decided to do the 1991 Chrysler model lineup. I thought this would be a nice little change from doing individual cars, just to give myself a break and you, and kind of take a broad brush at what Chrysler was doing in 91, because this was right before things got exciting for them and then right before the beginning of the end, in my humble opinion. So as always, sit back, get comfortable in your chair. We got some half calf this afternoon. Grab your beverage of choice and let's get started.
Motorweek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com.
Now it's time to continue our preview of what the major automakers are offering for 1991. This week we look at Chrysler. America's third largest automaker saw its fortunes dip as the new decade dawned. While there is no financial comparison between today's Chrysler and the company that nearly went bankrupt a decade ago, sales are off drastically. That could change just as drastically, however, now that the retooling of its immensely popular minivan design is completed. The 1991 Dodge Caravan, Plymouth Voyager, and Chrysler Town & Country are better than ever. While external styling remains conservative, it is smoother with all body panels except the roof new. The interior retains room but adds more comfort and convenience. The major powertrain addition is an all-wheel drive option, with four-wheel anti-lock brakes also a first-time option. By spring, all Chrysler minivans will include a driver's side airbag, an industry first for vans. Chrysler's...
Before they move on, let's talk about it. That's a good-looking van. I think that Chrysler did a really good job. I've done a whole history about their minivans, and they did a really good job for a long time of making everyone look better and perform better. They set the template for the minivan. They created the category, and then they did a really good job for a long time at constantly staying at the forefront and making everyone chase them. And how often have you heard that in the past 40 or 50 years by an American manufacturer around a product, right? And I think they did a great job. I think that one's handsome. I don't think it's the best looking of every generation, but I do think it's very handsome. And I thought the interior was very handsome. It's easy to see, even looking back, why it was the default choice for so many people. Never been a big fan of the all-wheel drive option myself, but they added it. And then being an industry first to add an airbag, solid, no problems.
Other big sellers in recent years have also been truck-based, even if Jeep Sport utility wagons are used more to get to the shopping mall than to the hunting lodge. Both horsepower and torque are up on all Cherokees, with a new wood-tone Briarwood model replacing the downsized Wagoneer. A value-oriented Jeep Cherokee Sport 5-door has been added at the low end of the segment. The ancestral Grand Wagoneer continues for at least one more year.
So, before they move on, of course, you know I love the Cherokee. I think it is just light years ahead of other things at the time. I understand if you found yourself interested in a Isuzu or Mitsubishi or, Chevy or Ford, whatever it happens to be. But I just think the Cherokee was special. I really do. I hate wood grain exteriors. I really do. I'm just sorry, but I've kind of come around to them as something to look back on and be like, yeah, that's so dorky. It's kind of cool, but I never saw the appeal of it back then. The Wagoneer, I'm here with a confession. I've never liked them. They were ancient equipment, and they felt it, and they could slather in whatever luxuries they wanted to, and I won't deny it was capable, but that was a vehicle from a previous generation. I don't mean generation of vehicle, I mean generation of people, and it just plugged along, and I believe it was superseded long before this by other manufacturers. So
up-to-date terms fit the new Jeep Wrangler Renegade. In an effort to capture more of the youth market, sculptured plastic body panels have been added that make this workhorse look more like a party animal. Power adds to that fun with the Cherokee's fuel-injected 4-liter available in Wranglers for the first time.
And You know, I've talked about this one. I've already done a whole reaction video about this generation Wrangler, and I had one. I think the body cladding is a little ridiculous. I do, but you really saw Wranglers being used more for college kids and high school kids and taking it to the mall and being seen in it than using it. And so that was just part of the trend to move it to a broader appeal. And let's face it, it worked. Great engine in that 4-liter. Great engine. Glad to see it. I'm a big fan of the 4-liter. So I love the Wrangler. Love me those Jeeps back then.
Power is also the notable addition to Chrysler's most luxurious cars. The Imperial now comes standard with the enlarged 3.8-liter engine. This fuel-injected V6 is optional on the New Yorker 5th Avenue. With only 3 more horsepower than the 3.3-liter it replaces, torque is up 20 to 204, peaking earlier in the rev band.
Well, and I think that's a handsome car. You know, you look back at what Oldsmobile or Ford was doing at the time, and then you look at that, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of old-fashioned. And then let's not forget, this is about when, you know, Acura was already out, and Infiniti and Lexus were coming along. But I still like that kind of, I like the wedge car, and I kind of like the old-fashioned American of that Imperial and the New Yorker. So the engine was a nice change, but I do think they're handsome. I do think they were pretty handsome.
Gets top billing on the A-body Dodge Spirit. For 2 years, Dodge let it be known that a 2.2-liter turbo with 16 valves could fit nicely into the Spirit. Now it's for real in this limited edition Spirit RT. The 225 horsepower engine transforms an already confident sedan to one that lives up to its name. 0 to 60 time is 6.8 seconds. Not bad for a car that can still return over 25 miles per gallon on the highway. Even better is that Dodge tweaked the suspension and added standard anti-lock to the package. Dodge.
And you know I like the Spirit and the Plymouth Acclaim. I think those, sure, they were still roughly variations, stretching and reinforcement. They were derivations of the K car platform, but I love them. That was right around my time of when I was driving and when I was coming of age to understand and start to love cars, and they sat right there. And if you look at what Ford had and you look at what GM had, and then you looked at that, and even what the Japanese had, I loved it. I loved it. Now, if I had to go back, would I buy a early 90s Toyota Camry or the Dodge? Well, for price and driving on a daily basis, and for you know, just enjoying the look of the car, it would be the Dodge. For absolute certainty that it would last forever, it would not be the Dodge. But I was a big fan. And it was cool they put that turbo in it and gave it some gumption.
Dodge also gets another overdue treat for 1991, the Dodge Shadow convertible. Expected to be the lowest priced convertible made in America, the drop-top Shadow looks great and has better body stiffness than the larger Chrysler LeBaron convertible. The Shadow 3-door, along with its Plymouth Sundance twin, will also be the least expensive American-made cars in 1991. Chrysler has brought back the America series for both cars. With a price of $7,699, a driver's side airbag is standard.
I loved their small cars. I really did. And the fact that they came out with a convertible was just super, super cool. And I've done some reaction videos to the Pontiac Sunbird. Now, that was more like an 85 model, as I recall. So this is 6 years later. And that looked like a better package. But I totally dig those cars. I really do. And I recall them very, very fondly of spending a little bit of time with them and having a friend, his family had one. Just a solid small car, you know, solid in terms of doing everything a small car should do. It did it. No fuss, no muss, no bother. And you could get it in a version that was the cheapest small car available in America. I mean, there's a lot to love about it. There really was.
91 news for imported Chrysler products revolve around a potent Dodge Stealth series. While much of the press attention has gone to the top RT twin turbo with four-wheel steering and all-wheel drive, the base Stealth with its single-cam V6 could be the style sleeper of the year.
I never liked that car. Back then, I never really liked that car. It wasn't until much later that I started to really appreciate it. At the time, I don't know why. It was too smoothed out, too poser, even though it had that incredible turbocharged all-wheel drive, right, VR4 version. But it just never did it for me. It never did. But as some years passed, I started to really appreciate that car, and it's a little hard to look at it and its Mitsubishi twin and not think that if I had the money at that time and I was looking for a car like that, that might not be the top choice. The problem is I can't ever see myself being in the market for a car like that, but I've come to appreciate it. And now we're going to talk about this bad boy right here, which I adore.
Eagle, the slick Talon adds anti-lock to its option list, while both front and all-wheel drive TSI turbos can now be ordered with an automatic transmission. ABS and an automatic are also available on Plymouth's Diamond Star variant, the Laser. While poor sales killed the Dodge Dakota convertible, Chrysler...
Well, and so they're going on the Dodge Dakota convertible. What a weird transition there. The Eagle Talon. I think it looks fantastic. I really do. I love it. I love the Mitsubishi version. I don't like the Laser version. There is something about the Plymouth Laser. They've used that name several times on cars. And Ford used it too, as I recall. The point is, I don't know. The Plymouth one always just seemed a little weak. For not engine wise, but just in terms of styling and name and image and everything else. It was just okay. But the Mitsubishi and the Eagle, man, I think they look great, especially in like that black. And they had that, I've told you before, they had that spoiler that went around, and there was an article back in the day. It said it looked like somebody with their collar up. I've always loved it. I had a buddy of mine who had one. He had an all-wheel drive turbocharged. It was so much fun. That car was so much fun. And to me, that was a 10 out of 10 experience. I loved that car. Never owned one, but I loved it. So Dakota, apparently.
Chrysler's venerable 5.2-liter V8 gives new life to this mid-size pickup series. Hill climbing abilities are outstanding on V8 four-wheel drive models, while maximum towing capacity increases to 6,700 pounds.
I'm sorry. Why? I want that truck. Dodge, Ram, right? If you're listening, it was a mid-sized truck. You had an optional V8, big V8, tons of capability, tons of bed space. That's what we want. And it's not, 10 feet tall off the ground. You don't have to have a ladder to get into it. It was just truck. I loved that truck.
And that's Chrysler's highlights for 1991. An extensive lineup of cars and trucks that looks fit for the times.
Okay, that was short, and I feel like there's some things they could have elaborated on and could have expanded on, and talking about Chrysler, but then talking about Dodge and talking about Plymouth and throwing an Eagle there. And I felt like they could have gone in a lot more detail on a lot of different things, but that's how most of these model lineups for them have always gone. And I gotta say, I did this hoping to see something, and it happened. I'll tell you, every time I do not watch these in advance. I come into them cold, so you get my real reaction. And I talk a lot about Chrysler on this channel, and I talk fondly about Chrysler at that beginning of the 90s. And right after this, when they replaced the Shadow with the Neon, they replaced the Spirit with the Cloud cars, then they come out with the LH cars, they redesigned the Dakota eventually. I think it was a golden age of Chrysler. They were hitting their style, internal workflow peak. And unfortunately, I've heard many times that maybe engines, transmissions, reliability was not certainly as good as what the Japanese were doing, but they made the most desirable cars in America. And then you add in the Wrangler and you add in the Cherokee and just everything Chrysler was doing. I liked it. And so we weren't a Chrysler family. But I saw year after year them coming, and certainly the minivan being a top seller, seeing them come out with car after car after car that really spoke to me and really shaped my opinion of them. And then I had friends who had Chryslers, and they all were fantastic, if I'm being honest. So I wanted to see this and see kind of, was it a mix, match, mess, or was it what I thought I remembered? And it was. On almost every single one of those places, every single position in the marketplace where they had a product, for me, it was the product to have. You think about the Cherokee, you think about the Wrangler, and then even the Shadow and the Spirit and things like that. It was the car to have. Now, there were some where it breaks down a little bit. Yeah, I still would have been a Buick lover at the time, and if I was who I am now and I lived back then yes, certainly I'd be over at Honda or Toyota. But for where I was at the time, my journey in cars, this time period right here and then right after it, was Chrysler was hitting on absolutely every cylinder. This one was a lot of fun, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. Thanks for being here.